Everyone, I'd like to call the regular meeting of the City Council on August 7th, 2018 to order. Madam Clerk, may we have the roll call, please?
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Chavez?
Here.
Councilmember Sternquist?
Here.
Councilmember Yu?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Fish?
Here.
Mayor Mann?
Here. For the invocation, we are pleased to have Mr. Jerry Jambazian, owner of Wonder Cleaners and Draperies. That business has been in the city for over 60 years and is located at 9136 Las Tunas Drive. We could all please rise for the invocation and stay standing for the Pledge of Allegiance afterwards.
Please join me in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you tonight to ask for your blessing for tonight's council meeting. Your word tells us to pray for those in authority over us. We think of our federal government, state government, county officials, and our council members here. I pray that you would give them wisdom in the decisions they will be making tonight for our benefit and good. I also pray, God, for our support staff, such as our city manager, city attorney, and city clerk, and all the staff that give input to their decision-making process. It is widely acknowledged that good things always happen at the local level. As a senior myself, I am grateful that this council will be considering a committee on aging tonight. Thank you for the input and the recommendations from the Senior Master Plan and Parks and Recreation Commission. Father, I end my prayer tonight thinking of those first responders and military who protect and serve us. I especially think of the thousands of firefighters at 23 different wildfires in California. Father, I ask all of this in your name and for your glory. Amen.
Amen. Troop 174 will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. The Scouts presenting the colors are Matthew Oakley, Nipun Batra, Alex Kwan, Joshua Chen, Jaden Lee, and Andrew Sui. Troop 174 just finished an 8-day Sierra backpacking trip, and they are looking forward to their annual family picnic that begins on August 18th. They meet every Thursday at Westminster Presbyterian Church from 7:30 p.m. to 9 p.m., and everyone is welcome to attend. Troop 174.
Detail, attention. Detail, forward march. Detail, halt. Post.
Those not in uniform, place your right hand over your heart. Pledge of Allegiance. The Pledge of
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
2.
Detail, reform. Detail, about face. Detail, forward march. Detail, halt. Dismiss.
Thank you, Troop 174. Next, moving on to ceremonial matters, we have the Pet of the Month. And we're pleased to have Gosha from San Gabriel Valley Humane Society, who will be presenting the Pet of the Month.
Hello, dear Mayor, Council members. Thank you for having us. I came today with Gumdrop. We all call her actually at the shelter Gummy. Gummy is the longest shelter resident. She's been with us for over 7 months right now. And she came to us as a stray. We don't know her past history, but what we know is she's the sweetest dog ever. She's very affectionate, very easy to walk, and don't be shy. She loves to spend time outside. She came to us quite energetic, but the 7 months in the shelter, she mellowed down significantly. She really, really needs home. She's a really lovely dog, and for some reason she's been overlooked by potential adopters. But we hope that definitely there is home for her out there, so we just have to find one. I also want to mention that on August 18th, which is coming up, we have our shelter participates in the special adoption event that is going to go all around the city. It's called Clear Our Shelters, and many animals at our shelter will be available for adoption only for $20. And they are fully vaccinated, spayed, microchipped, neutered, so they will be ready to go home. So hopefully, please spread a word. Hopefully, many of them will find a home that day. We have a lot of cats and kittens right now that need a home, and a lot of German Shepherds for all the German Shepherd lovers. And of course, Gami is waiting for her family. So please visit us, and thank you again for having us. That's a special day for our shelter animals to come here and then go to home just for a night. So she will be having a great evening. Thank you.
Yeah, great.
you.
Thank you, Gosha.
Thank you.
All right, so actually tonight we have a little bit of a surprise presentation that staff wanted to show us. I don't know if Mr. Cook, you want to... All right. So as everyone knows, there's been sort of an extra effort on the city's end to enlarge our social media footprint and kind of find ways that we can reach out to a broader audience. And some of you have probably seen the Ask the Mayor sessions on Facebook Live. Staff has also been looking into other strategies using existing resources that we have. And this video is a product of staff's ingenuity and creativity on trying to promote a very special part of our local businesses. And I guess this is one of the. I guess this is the first video that we have done, and depending on sort of the reception and feedback from everyone, this may be a continuing trend, a way of kind of like promoting our city's local food scene. And as many of you may be aware, a lot of the so-called local foodies or bloggers or others tend to gravitate towards social media as a platform, as well as video media, to kind of spread the message. And we thought this would be an interesting sort of a pilot to see how we can do more on the economic development front. So take it away.
Happy and full. That's just a satisfaction right there. The residents come in and said, "Hey, Tony, I'm so happy that you finally put a place like this in Temple City where there's craft beers that goes very well with Vietnamese food. This kind of food is synonymous to this particular town, Ninh Hoa. People can still have this authentic Vietnamese food and still have a great time." I would totally recommend number 5, which is the roll. That's our signature rolls, which is nem nướng. It's a type of pork paste where you ground it finely and infused with lots of garlics and lots of spices. It's just really good and really easy to eat. You can share. It comes in 4, packed with really smoky flavor, garlicky, with fresh Vietnamese herbs and fresh green chopped lettuces and all that stuff. It's really refreshing. Introducing our family recipe to our guests, what we're growing up with, what we've been eating as a family, and introducing that to the general public Every morning, I would be out at 7, 8 o'clock, pick out my produce, bring it back fresh. That's why people taste the difference, because of the nice crispness of the vegetables. Hey, banh mi is not just the banh mi you always see. Wait a minute. Banh mi, isn't it you use baguette? All the ingredients with charbroil, pork shoulders, cucumbers, pickled carrots, all those ingredients are 95% the banh mi. We stumbled across ciabatta bread. I was like, wait a minute, let's put this together. It looks pretty amazing. Twist, we put 2 runny eggs in it. When you push that together, and just you see the egg ones. People have been raving about it. Temple City is a close niche. The people, the setting, just everyone that comes together, you know, supporting our business is just, they make you feel that, hey, you know what, you belong here. Without even asking, people would just tell you, oh my goodness, everything's so delicious. Even when you're putting in 12, 14 hours, by hearing that, it's just confirmation that you're doing something right. Eating them, drink craft beer.
Can I have the lights back on, please?
I don't know, I kind of like that move.
All right, yeah, thank you. And I just want to close on a note, because I know a lot of us here have probably heard a common refrain from some of our residents. Every restaurant seems to be a Chinese restaurant in Temple City. I mean, let's. I think part of what we've been trying to do is try to maybe dispel that myth. The idea that Asian cuisine is some monolithic, all-encompassing, singular category it's a myth. It's not really true. And I think starting with summer rolls, summer rolls kind of, in my opinion, represents sort of the future, the evolution of the restaurant experience. And we always want to talk about what are we doing right in Temple City? What are the good things going on in Temple City? And to be able to kind of highlight that and be a partner with our businesses, I think will only help us grow as a community. And we've also had comments from, you know, I remember we did an article in Connect magazine with Summer Rolls as well. And speaking with Mr. Tony Lam, there has been a lot of other customers who may not have tried that restaurant if it wasn't for that article. So this video is kind of we're aiming for the same goal. We're trying to let people know the diversity of experiences we have in Temple City, and maybe encouraging folks who didn't know about a hidden spot here. And if we're able to get people to go out and just try it, I think we've done our job. So I look forward to seeing some of other staff's ideas, and as well as council, if you have any specific ideas of how.
Will be featuring more restaurants, or just?
I think the restaurant part is sort of the low-hanging fruit, because we do have a lot of exciting new places that have opened up in the last couple years, such as the ones in Camellia Square, as well as the one inside the TJ Maxx Plaza, and also, I mean, the Kmart Plaza also has had some new restaurants. And we also, in council discussions about sort of the evolving retail landscape, we've seen more and more restaurants kind of come in and take the place of traditional brick and mortar retail. And so this is kind of an effort on the economic development front to maybe emphasize and illustrate our strengths. And hopefully we can build off of these sort of foundation blocks.
I have a suggestion, maybe. You know, in the years past, we used to do the Dining Under the Stars, which highlighted a lot of the local restaurants. We haven't done it in many years, and maybe it's time to look at it again, since we have new and upcoming restaurants. Like you said, a lot of people, I hear, people don't even want to try them. Then once they've tried them, they have a very good experience. This might be something to reintroduce you know,
And I
our
think,
local.
and I think you've read staff's mind. In
Oh,
fact, that's,
okay, good.
I guess the spoiler alert is, I guess we're trying to look at ways to
Good.
bring something like that back.
I just want to share that, gosh, it's been 3 years or longer, I don't know, but Council Mayor Pro Tem Fish and I had the opportunity when he was just thinking about coming to Temple City to go out to his summer roll restaurant that's in Rosemead. And we tried some of the food and we were so excited about saying, yes, you need to come. And we both had various the rolls, but we had Vietnamese coffee that was delicious, but you don't sleep for 3 days. But it is so exciting. I mean, we've gone back numerous times, but to see Tony and see staff highlight him, because it was just such a unique experience when you first go and, you know, you meet someone who has an interest in coming to Temple City, and then now they're doing so well. And the same thing with Green Zone restaurant. Had the opportunity, I think, Brian, you and I went to Green Zone when that was just a thought and tried it out. And now Jill is being so successful with her restaurant there. And actually went to lunch with a friend today, and Green Zone, I forget, is closed on Tuesdays. So we went over to the Korean barbecue. She had never tried it, and she loved it. So it's very exciting to have this type of diversity of food in our city.
Although I've had a little bit of a different experience.
You have?
Being in Pasadena, who has quite a number of different restaurants, I do the same thing. And when I go to a restaurant, I always say, well, God, we'd love to have you in Temple City. But they won't come because they feel that they wouldn't blend in, because they, at least in their mind, the people I talk to, seem to think that if you're not an Asian type restaurant, you're not going to do well in Temple City. So I think we need to overcome that. I don't know if that's on the staff level or what, but I would like to see this continue a little further and seek out those restaurants. I don't know that if we have a mechanism in the city to actually go out and seek restaurants, or do we just rely on somebody's decision to come here, which to me is a kind of a hit and miss type of deal. But I think if you want to see a truly diverse restaurant, Pasadena is a good example.
Yes.
That's a truly diverse, because you have different types of ethnic backgrounds and things like that, where it would be nice to see more of that in Temple City, I think. But that's something that I think we as a council need to work on, and I think we're going in the right direction. And certainly things like this that highlight how well you can do in Temple City has to certainly, hopefully, make an impact at some point. So.
I'm just curious, where's Michael's not here? There's a new restaurant that opened up, and I saw that they serve breakfast, and it's on Las Tunas. What is the name of that restaurant?
Bay Express.
Bay, B-A-Y, Bay Express.
Where?
It's
Next to the Wells Fargo off of that Primrose, one over.
See now, but see that's something that I wish
I
we
just
would
happened to
have
walk
more
and see
information.
it, and it said
'Cause
breakfast.
if this is the first time we're hearing it because you brought it to us, there seems to be a little bit of a disconnect. I would love to hear this information in some way so that we can share that with others as well.
And I think that's also one of the goals of this is, like you said, there's a lot of information that may not be readily apparent, but there could be hidden gems here and there. That we're a city that's pretty small, and yet there's still hidden gems here and there.
Correct.
So, hopefully this leads us down a path that is beneficial to us as a city as a whole. But that remains to be seen, and there's a lot of work ahead. So I just want to thank staff for coming up with a lot of the work, doing a lot of work to kind of like make this happen, and look forward to seeing additional ideas from you all.
Thank you to our media partners, Red 88, who do produce the council meetings as well, for helping produce that video.
Okay. So moving on to public comments on items not listed on the agenda. I have a couple here. We have Miss Lucy Lee.
I'm going to divert off. I'm going to be off subject for a little bit. Speaking of the article, the 24-hour around Temple City, one of the stores that was featured was Olympic Donuts on Lower Azusa and Temple City. I drive by there and I didn't know what it was, and they were featured in the business. Actually, I know a friend who knows the owner, and they were very honored to be featured in the article, and actually it brought them business because other residents didn't know they existed.
What article are you talking about?
Last year, one of our Connect magazine, we did a 24-hour around Temple City,
Right.
and they were, obviously one of the morning ones, and he was featured at our Deputy Chen. No, you. Yeah. So it was interesting. The main reason why I'm here is I want to remind everybody tomorrow night is our National Night Out. The city has a lot of tables and booths. We have our CERT. We have Neighborhood Watch. We have Tzu Chi this year is coming to join us, and we have Red Cross. So there will be free hot dogs, free food. Everybody is welcome. This is, enjoy a night of great music along with some information to help protect your neighborhood, your environment. And there should be displayed the Shaky Quakey House as usual, and all the other awesome vehicles and whatnot that we have every National Night Out. And then next Thursday, it's kind of early, but next Thursday, August 16th, is our Area 8 Neighborhood Watch meeting. We are counting down. That's our third to the last for the year. It's at Gidley School, 10226 Lower Azusa Road, 5:30 to 7:30, free food, delicious food as usual. Come and pick up some information, meet your neighbors, ask questions, talk about, hear what's being discussed about crime fighting and disaster preparedness, which we are always thinking about, especially now with all the wildfires going on. So that's it. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Lucy. And we appreciate all the work you do for Neighborhood Watch and all the other things. All right. Moving on, next is Mr. Albert Morani. Yes.
Hi there, folks. I would like to present an idea that I wanted to bring something up and put on the agenda for the next meeting, and that is to be able to have,
Thank you.
that was to be able to see about working with the city and opening up a medical cannabis apothecary and to explore the idea. I've talked with the city manager and been emailing with the city council, and I would like to be able to place this on the agenda so I can present a lot of current information that's going on in the industry, as well as the research studies and the current implications that we're having with the industry that are helping our veterans, that are helping people that are addicted to opiates, and to be able to help with that crisis that we have going on, as well as to be able to help people with chronic pain, and maybe to explain more of the industry to try and reverse the stigma that the industry has. Because cannabis is a plant that is very beneficial in a lot of ways for helping people, especially with chronic pain and other diseases. So I wanted to be able to put that on the agenda, if that's possible, and be able to present the information to council, as well as have people here in support of this kind of business in our city. And I also think it would be very helpful for our city to create a partnership with the city and be beneficial to the city as well as the business. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. And so I think since you've been in contact with Mr. Cook will discuss and update the rest of the council, and we'll see where that goes from there.
Great.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for the consideration.
Thank you.
And so is there anyone else who would like to make a public comment at this time? Mr. Steve Stafford?
Mayor Mann, Mayor Pro Tempore Fish, council members. Councilmember Chavez asked the question how we could reach out to these restaurants. That is normally what the Chamber of Commerce does, is they reach out and bring businesses here. And they need to look at some of the restaurants in Pasadena. There's some Chinese restaurants in Pasadena that are good. There's some in Orange County. If they came up here, they could probably make it. They're very popular down there. It's going to take the Chamber of Commerce to reach out and bring these businesses here. And the other thing is they need to do some outreach with the city manager, and get together with the chamber and do some big-time outreach to attract some of these people. Now's the time to do it. The economy's good. They're more likely now to take a chance than if you waited 4 or 5 years, or if it was like 2008 when they weren't taking any chances. This is the best time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stafford. Is there anyone else who would like to address the City Council at this time? All right, seeing none, I will close public comment. We'll move on to the consent calendar, and I believe Mr. Cook.
Thank you, Mayor Mann. Just real briefly, I'd like to pull 7E, just to put some points that we want to bring up with the council. Exciting news, actually, but it's not in the staff report.
Okay, so can we have a motion for all items except item E?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Chavez?
Yes.
Councilmember Sternquist?
Yes.
Councilmember Yu?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Fish?
Yes.
Mayor Mann?
Yes. Mr. Cook?
Sure.
Item E.
Mayor Mann, members of the council, 7E is a first step in the development of the Primrose properties. Coming to you afterwards, after this, and if either of members of the standing committee want to mention anything as well, this is the first step in the demolition of the properties to future development. We're working with David Goodell, our kind of in-house architect that we have, to assist us in that process. So this is the first exciting step forward in the future development of these projects. And I don't know if either Councilmember Yu or Mayor Mann wanted to mention anything else from what they saw from the standing committee meeting.
Sure. Councilmember Yu, do you want to maybe get us?
Yes, certainly. Like the city manager said, the demolition is the first step to any new development. Anytime where vacant property is not really good to leave them alone. So this is a good step, good first step. So I'm going to pull the ad hoc or standing committee report because as it relates to this item as well. So July 20th, the Standing Committee on Future Development of City Properties met, and we again talked about the Primrose property. That's the last meeting before we're coming back to the City Council. So we just want to see how the idea is consolidated. So we discussed a whole number of ideas, and they're all at preliminary stage. We don't want to develop too much without the City Council's input. The ones that we look at involve as simple as service parking, structured parking. We touch on pocket parks. We touch on neighborhood parks and a community center. So, and there's also a shopping alley, if you will. It's sort of an interesting concept to approach creating our own shopping street. I think in October, I think we'll be coming back. The staff is also preparing right now some economic analysis as to how much each option will cost. I think, Mr. Cook, we're coming back to the council when? October?
Last week in September. Last meeting in September.
Right. So we'll be bringing this item back. So.
Okay, great. Yeah, and I'll just add this is an exciting part of the planning and discussion. We also have the other standing committee for Las Tunas that I know has been working hard developing additional concepts for enhancing Las Tunas, and I think these are all pieces that are tied together. I think it's difficult for us to make decisions and discuss one without kind of discussing the other. So I believe staff will also be working on maybe looking at when we can bring that back, working with the standing committee first.
Well, since you brought that up, I was going to bring it up later when we were talking about standing committee, but I don't know that anything's happening on the Las Tunas downtown revitalization. We need to kind of step that up a little bit.
Okay.
It's been quite a while now. It's kind of been put on a little bit of a back burner, I guess. So I'm glad to hear that somebody's taking, paying attention, because we've had that standing committee for, 4 years now, over 4 years.
Yeah, so we're hoping one or the other becomes a catalyst for each other. I mean, they're all related in some ways, so I think having that discussion for these two items as closely as possible as a full council is to our benefit, because one impacts the other. So, all right, so thank you, Councilmember Yu, for reporting back out on that. So, Mr. Cook, is there anything you'd like to add?
I just ask for your approval.
Okay. All right, so may I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
A second?
Second. All right, motion second. Can we have a roll call, please, for item E?
Councilmember Chavez?
Yes.
Councilmember Sternquist?
Yes.
Councilmember Yu?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Fish?
Yes.
Mayor Mann?
Yes. So moving on, public hearing, we have none. Unfinished business, we have none. New business, item A, we have the proposed Committee on Aging.
Thank you, Mayor Mann. From the Senior Master Plan came some recommendations. This was one of the several more immediate, recommendations to bring forward. Staff, Mr. Lawson, our Parks Manager, will go over the process that we went through and the recommendation that staff has before you today.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Cook. Good evening, Mayor Mann, council members. As you know, the Temple City Senior Master Plan was adopted in April of this year. And with that, staff has begun implementation of the various action steps. If you can recall, there were 24 total within immediate, short-term, and long-term range. And so staff is really making an effort to start implementing as many immediate action steps as possible. And by immediate, we mean they were identified to be completed within a year of adoption. So one of the immediate action steps we've been working diligently on is action step number 4, which is the city should establish a new standing committee, the Committee on Aging, under the Parks and Rec Commission to advise the commission and city council on older adult issues and concerns. So in doing so, staff, we contacted various local cities that had similar older adult committees. We looked at everything from the name to how often they met, the amount of members, and so forth. So after reviewing those models, we developed a recommended criteria and standards for the proposed committee, and we presented them to the Parks and Rec Commission for review and approval on July 18th, 2018, and I'll kind of go over what we presented and what their comments as well. So getting into it, the name, we thought Temple City Committee on Aging would be a good name for it. The authority, I'll just say the COA of short, will be a standing committee under the Parks and Recreation Commission. Looking at the basic functions, that would be to assist the Parks and Recreation Department with the implementation of the Temple City Senior Master Plan and provide an annual report to the Commission and City Council. That was really to provide an annual report card to Commission and Council was the only thing that the Parks and Rec Commission added. They were okay with everything else, but they wanted us to add that, and we planned on doing so anyway, so we included that before you this evening. It's to advise and assist Parks and Recreation staff regarding activities, programs, and services for seniors, to inform the Parks and Recreation Commission and the City Council about programs and services benefiting seniors, to evaluate senior programs and services annually, to advocate for legislative issues that affect the lives of older adults, and to disseminate information that will enable seniors to participate actively in the democratic process. So when we looked at those basic functions, we wanted to make sure that they're consistent with the Temple City Senior Master Plan and what the committee came up with there, and we're pretty confident that those functions mesh well with those. So in looking at the membership, we're recommending that the committee would consist of at least 9 representatives of the community. 50% or more shall be 50 years or older, And we use that number, 50 years, or that age rather, because that was the number that we looked at when we actually devised the Temple City Senior Master Plan. So again, just staying consistent with that, we thought it's imperative to have at least half of the group meeting that age requirement. We looked at each member shall serve a staggered 2-year term. Initial appointment shall be 2 or 3 years from the date of appointment to June 30th. So the term shall commence on July 1 and terminate on June 30th, so it's consistent with our fiscal year. We looked at membership to be drawn from community members, professionals in the field of aging, nonprofit leaders, et cetera. That was consistent with also how we recruited for our Temple City Senior Master Plan Advisory Committee. The Parks and Rec Commission and City Council shall each appoint one of its members to serve on the COA as a non-voting representative who does not count towards a quorum. Initial and ongoing appointment of members to the COA shall be made by a committee, and we talked about the committee consisting of the Parks and Recreation Director, the Manager, Parks and Recreation Coordinator who oversees senior services, and the appointed members of the City Council and Park and Recreation Commission, as stated in paragraph 4 above. And a few more membership items that are recommended. If there's additional members throughout the year that we think would really be lend a good hand to the committee, if you will, that could be proposed, and they can be brought on with the approval of the committee. And we kind of looked at tentatively having the COA meet on a quarterly basis. We looked at just January, April, July, October. The exact day, time, and location would be determined once we get the committee. The governance, we'd have officers, a chair and a vice chair. They'd serve from July 1 to June 30th. 1-year terms, may serve a second consecutive year. The chair shall appoint chairs of subcommittees as needed, and the chair will be able to appoint replacements for vacancies that occur within the year. And a quorum obviously would consist of a simple majority. So that's, looking at the next steps. Assuming approval this evening, as presented or amended, the council is requested to appoint one member to serve on the COA. And upon approval, we'll then go to the Parks and Recreation Commission to appoint a member to serve on the committee as well, possibly as early as August 15th meeting. And then we would start recruitment for the committee. I've worked with Peggy to see the template, if you will, for the youth committee. We're kind of mirroring the format and obviously just revising it to meet the needs of this committee, but we're trying to stay consistent. So we're starting to work on an outreach and how to spread the word and start advertising much like we did for the Senior Master Plan Advisory Committee. And then the council and Parks and Recreation Commission appointees will then assist staff with the selection of the members once we get all the applications and kind of sit down and figure out who we're going to select as a committee. So again, the recommendation is to review the criteria and standards I've presented this evening, approve as presented or amended, and then if you could appoint a council member to the committee as a non-voting member. These are our recommendations. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you.
Great.
If you have
Are
any.
there any council questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Steve, under your basic functions, it's my understanding that this standing committee is basically going to operate through the Parks and Recreation Department, or Commission, I'm sorry. And so, under which circumstances will the council ever receive reports or perhaps requests for authority to do something? I'm assuming it's kind of the same thing. If it's going to cost money, it's got to come through us, but are we going to, other than just getting a report in our book here, are we going to have any oral reports or anything like that? Or have we thought that out yet or gotten to that point of how that's going to work?
Yeah, we have discussed obviously providing recurring reports, whether it's monthly, bi-monthly, quarterly. I think we'll determine that. But I would, and Kathy, if you want to, but I would say if there's something that comes up that would require that's being recommended by the committee, that there's a fiscal impact, it would definitely come before you to do
Right.
so.
Well, I think it has to almost.
Well, I imagine
Absolutely.
the city council member and also the park and rec.
Well,
member
they can
would
report
each
back.
report back.
And something that's not
Yeah.
in our normal senior services budget, that it would be a normal program, or, so if there's a fiscal impact, that would definitely be brought before
Yeah,
you.
maybe like we did with the chamber or something like that.
Like,
Get a report. That'd be a good idea.
yeah.
Because I would like to, as a council, kind of be interested and stay on top of what they're doing. Not necessarily to guide them but to hear what they're doing on a regular basis and take more of an active interest in it, rather than just to have a report through the Parks and Recreation Commission or something.
Yes, and that was the intent of having both a council
Right.
representative as well as a commissioner to help disseminate that information. But yeah, there will be, recurring
Yeah, no,
updates.
I forgot. It's a good point, Vince. I'm glad you mentioned it. Yeah, that'd be a good way of keeping that line open. Okay. All right, good. You don't need to get up, Cap. Unless you want to, of course.
I do have one question, Mr. Mayor. I think one of the suggestions is that each member should show up 2-year term, which I think is fair. But the initial, because in order, I guess you want a staggered member. So
Yes.
one is on a 2-year, one's on 3-year. As I remember, when we first set up the Public Safety Commission, traffic, I thought we did a 1 and 2
I think we
year
did a
term
1 and 2.
instead of a 2 to 3.
Because 3 years is
It's pretty long. Yeah. So I was thinking that perhaps we might want to consider that.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think since it's just starting, I think it would better serve if we see how it's working. If there are any changes, it's easier to tweak after 1 or 2 years than 2 or 3 years, perhaps. So yeah, I would agree with that suggestion as well.
Okay. And I do have a question also. For the application process, assuming we move forward with this, how long is the recruitment process for this committee?
We haven't finalized that, but I know for like the Senior Master Plan Advisory Committee, I believe we recruited for 30 days, and we might have extended it another 15 to 30 days. I think we have the advisory committee members already in place. Several have expressed interest. I think by utilizing the city website, social media, some of our email blasts, I think we can get the word out there. Utilizing Connect if the timing works. So we're going to do all we can, making announcements, at our senior programming that we have at the community center. So we're hoping to get a good. I would probably 30 days to start, and then kind of go from there.
I think you get a good response, actually.
My understanding is there will be an article or some information on this in the Connect magazine, which will be going out within the next month. And then we would probably keep it open at least 30 days. It could be longer depending on how many applications we get. I think holding our first meeting in January might be a little too soon, but that's our goal. If it doesn't happen in January, we can always determine. It doesn't have to be January, April, whatever. We can start at any particular month. So we don't want to rush this. We want to get a good pool of applicants and select a good committee, because especially the first year or two, it's going to be so important to make sure we're moving forward and going in the right direction on the senior master plan.
Yeah. The Senior Advisory Committee, would they be allowed to apply as well?
Yes, and in fact, that was one of the questions that we asked all of our committee members at our last meeting, was how many would be interested in serving on this committee once it was developed, and not all of them, but almost all of the 14 or 15 committee members indicated they would be interested. We want some new people as well, so I don't know that we would necessarily appoint all of them. Not all of them meet the 50-year requirement, so we would have to be cautious, since 50% of the committee has to be 50 and over. But yes, I think there are quite a few of those members that are interested, and we would really think they would be a good resource, at least to have several committee members on this committee to kind of lead the direction a little bit.
How many committee members you have? 15, you said?
I think our senior master plan committee ended up being 14 or 15.
14, yes.
Is 9 going to be enough for this group?
I think it is, at least, I think it's doable to start with. We're going to have to wait and see how many applicants we get.
I know you
And
did
this
have-
is something that we can expand if we need to.
Yeah, you did build in a component, I see,
Yes.
where you can always appoint additional.
But we do want it to be manageable, and we want to be able to meet quorum so we can have our formal meetings. So looking at other models that we looked at from other cities, 9 seemed to be a good number. Some were less, some were more.
And we did include the caveat of at least 9. I think the goal is to have no less than 9. So, you know, like it states, it just really depends on the amount of applications we get. And so,
And Kathy,
I'm sorry.
I'm
Go ahead.
sorry.
Oh, go
And,
ahead.
Kathy, they do not need to be residents, correct?
You do not need to be a resident.
Okay, thank you.
So it just from anywhere, you can get someone.
Could be from anywhere. I look
They
at
have to
this.
have something to do with the community, I'm assuming.
Right,
Because
they
I
should have
noticed we
some
do
tie to the
other one.
community.
Right.
Most of our,
We don't have that in writing anywhere, though, do we?
no, it just
Well, it
said
does
they
say-
need to
it
bring
says,
some experience or expertise.
Members may be drawn from community members, professionals in the field of aging.
Number 3 under membership, community members, professionals in
Yeah.
the field of aging, nonprofit leaders, et cetera.
and that was the same language we used in the master plan. And
Correct.
we had several individuals who didn't reside in Temple City, but
Correct.
either their business that was senior related
Correct.
benefited the city and so forth. So we really took it on a case-by-case basis for those who weren't Temple City residents. Obviously, the goal is, I think, to get as many as possible, but there were a few exceptions where this individual can really help us, and
Because I
they're
know
part
we
of the
had
business
health
community.
professionals that worked in Temple City.
Yes.
They were familiar with our residents, but they did not actually live in Temple City.
The vast majority of our senior master plan committee are Temple City residents, or were
Mhm.
Temple City residents.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions at this point? All right, seeing none.
I had a question, and I forgot what it was.
Well, you gotta.
It
You
must
gotta
be that aging process.
Senior moment, right?
Mayor, I do have a couple comments for you.
Sure.
Typically with a type of committee that's other than a council standing committee, we would form that by ordinance, like a planning commission or Parks and Rec. Since it's a standing committee of the Parks and Rec Commission, we don't need an ordinance. But I do recommend that you take all of the basic functions, the membership, the governance provisions, and memorialize that in in a resolution so that you can track it and provide it to your members. That can easily be done and be on your consent calendar. It's your next regular agenda, and I don't think that will disrupt your advertising or recruitment process at all, but it would be better. And you can make a few of the tweaks that you've mentioned when we bring that back to you.
Okay.
And I do want to mention that, this will need to be subject to not only the Matty Act, but the Brown Act. And you probably want to specify that members of the committee will not receive a stipend.
Also, I remember my question. Are current commissioners prohibited from serving on this, or are they eligible? So let's say we had a current Parks and Rec.
I would say no. They could be
Commissioner.
appointed as the liaison, but they couldn't serve on both,
Right, so if you're on the Parks and Rec Commission, you can't serve on this.
unless you're appointed as the
Yeah,
Parks and Rec
liaison,
Commission
right, right,
liaison.
right.
Correct.
Okay.
But how about if you're on a different commission? You
Well, that's what I
can
meant.
serve, right?
What about if you're on the Planning Commission? Can you serve on this thing as well?
Why not?
I
Yes.
don't know, I'm asking a question. Should there,
Yeah, I think you would follow your general rule, which says you get to serve on one commission. You
All right.
can't serve on the Planning Commission and the Parks and Rec Commission or something like that.
no, but can you serve on the Planning Commission and this aging, committee?
For aging.
Temple City Committee on Aging, which is really a standing committee, not really a commission. Can you serve on both at the same time?
Well, that's up to you to determine, but if you're going to follow something other than what your basic rule is one commission, you need to specify it in the resolution.
I would prefer that we not do that double, because it gives more people the opportunity. I mean, I don't want to limit it. I mean, if all of a sudden we have an interest from 2 or 3 of our commissioners, and they're already commissioners, let's get some other people involved. Not that they wouldn't be right for it, but I'd like to spread things around a little bit. So I would prefer to see something that would say you're not allowed to do so.
So we would then add that to the resolution along with the term itself? Okay, so we'll make sure that's clarified in the resolution.
Yeah, and if I recall, we had several members from the General Plan Advisory Committee that became commissioners, and they left the
Yes.
committee.
Right.
So I think that's consistent with what we've been doing.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a good comment. Thank you. So at this point, I'd like to open this up to public comment. Let's see, I don't have any written requests. Is there anyone from the public? Miss Lucy Liu?
Of course, I'll comment on this, right? I'm getting there. I would love to see this in place soon because, as you know, I was part of the Senior Master Planning Advisory Committee, and it's just so exciting that we, as a city, is looking into this. And, you know, Kathy, Steve, we have a great team, and they're doing a lot for the seniors. Again, I'll be there very, very soon. And I would love to see some of the services and some of the goals that we had in place be realized by the time I do hit those stages down the road, because I plan to live here for as long as I can. So thank you very much for considering this, and hopefully we will have a very robust committee, and we'll have great input from all sorts of, whether community members or professionals, whatnot. We had a great poll. We had a lot of great speakers. You know, somehow if we can just continue to dip into those talents and whatnot, that'd be great. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Is there anyone else that'd like to comment at this time? All right, seeing none, I will close public comment. Any council discussion? Maybe I could suggest Mayor Pro Tem Fish be on the committee, but if there's anyone else who may want to do this, I guess now's your time to speak.
Don't everybody raise their hand at once.
No?
I'm the oldest one on the council, so I don't think I should be on there.
She's too young to be on that committee.
William's too young.
I know, and
so-
William can't do
I
it.
don't meet the qualification. All right, so
I accept.
so can we have a thank you.
You're welcome.
Can we have a motion for this that includes the amendment with the resolution and the other items that Mr. City Attorney mentioned?
I would make a motion that we approve the creation of the Standing Committee on Aging as discussed, and as the two amendments or suggestions that were made in addition to the presentation, and that we appoint Mayor Pro Tem Fish to the COA as a non-voting member.
Do we have a second?
Second.
And just to clarify, that includes the term change that
Yeah,
Councilmember Yu
the
and
two we
Chavez.
talked about.
Correct.
Okay.
And then the exclusiveness of you serve on one committee, you
Correct.
cannot.
Right.
One commission, you
Yeah,
count.
one commission or one committee.
Yeah, those were the two we discussed.
Okay, good. So we have a motion and a second. Can we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Chavez?
Yes.
Councilmember Sternquist?
Yes.
Councilmember Yu?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Fish?
Yes.
Mayor Mann?
Yes. All right, so we've taken the first step, and looking forward to see this process unfold. And like Miss Lucy Liu said, I know we're going to get a robust committee, and it's going to be a very exciting year. All right, moving on to new business item B, City Commission discussion. Mr. Cook.
Mayor Mann, members of the council, in June, the City Commissioner Recruitment Ad Hoc, Councilmember Chavez and Councilmember Yu, asked that the council consider a discussion possibly increasing the number of city commissioner seats for the Parks and Recreation Commission and the Transportation and Public Safety Commission from 5 to 7, and the Planning Commission remaining unchanged. As you know, and as you've been discussing, you do have 3 commissions: Planning, Parks and Recreation, Transportation, and Public Safety. Each commission consists of 5 members. Each commissioner serves a term of 2 years with no term limits. And the meeting schedules vary for each one of the commissions. So I hand it over to the council for any discussion they want to have related to those 2 things. We would have to, if so directed tonight, we would have to change any ordinance if you change the composition and structure of any of those commissions.
Okay. Do we have any questions? Yeah.
Do we know why these two particular commissions were selected? I know, I guess I'm asking the ad hoc.
Did you want to address that, or do you want me
Go ahead.
to? In our discussions, as we mentioned, I don't think you were at that meeting. I think you were gone.
No, I was not. I wasn't here.
One of the reasons was with the Planning Commission, it seemed to, in the decisions they make on a daily basis or as they make, seems to be more of a role that you need a certain kind of expertise, and therefore we felt that just adding numbers to that could have an effect on that process. Whereas with and not that the decisions that the Parks and Rec or that the public transportation make are any less important, but we felt that that the decisions that they make affect people's lives, and it seems like there are more people, at least in the last few couple of years, have expressed more of an interest in that committee and those commissions than on the planning.
Okay.
More numbers, I guess you could say.
And is that same for public safety?
Yeah. I would say that the majority of at least from what I've seen, more of them have expressed an interest on either the Parks and Rec or the public transportation. The planning, it seems like we don't get as many because most people, usually apply if they have some type of background in that, and they felt that they would have something to add to it. It's a little more of a learning curve, I guess you could say. But part of the history of this, and one of the reasons I think that Councilmember, you and I were asked the council to give this some thought, was that it seems that in the last few years we've gotten less and less applications for commissioner positions. And I think some of that is due to the fact that individuals are reluctant to apply because they feel that to apply against, let's say, an incumbent commissioners is not really, they don't have much of a chance to get on. And so we don't get a lot of applications. And in fact, this last time, I forget how many we had, but I don't know, Peggy, if you can remember, there weren't 6 or 7 applications, I think, counting the returning people. So there wasn't a whole lot of interest. And we felt that maybe increasing the number would generate maybe some more interest, at least initially, of course, in retrospect. And I think about that, if we were to go to 7, once we get 7 on there, we're back to the original thing. We've got 7 people now to think about, and you got incumbents. So I don't know what the answer. I think the goal, and Vince, you can chime in or correct me if I'm wrong, but the goal is to generate more of an interest and give some people at least some expectation that they have a good chance of getting on these commissions. Because at one thing, we have good commissioners, and we have really good commissioners, as you know, serving on these commissions.
Yes,
and to remove them just for the sake of removing them really doesn't make a whole lot of sense either. So one of the things that I forgot to ask, and I should have had staff look into this, is, and maybe you can ballpark it, is how many commissioners we have lost over the last few years who have just stepped down, and there have been open seats. I can't recall that many of them. I know that we've removed one commissioner, only one in the last 6 years that I can remember, but I don't know how many that actually have decided, you know what, I don't want to serve on the commission anymore voluntarily. It hasn't been that many of them.
Maybe 1 or 2.
I can think of more than that, because I can think of people just that I know personally that usually it has to do with them relocating.
Yeah, moving
Is
up.
the-
Well, yeah,
is
yeah,
the
if they
big
move
deal.
away.
They move away.
But I don't think it's that many. I bet you we can count on one hand how many we've lost over the last few years.
Actually, I've been thinking about that, and just using the time that Mayor Pro Tem and I were elected roughly 3 years ago, on the Planning Commission, these are the commissioners that were appointed after we were elected, so within the last 3 years. On the Planning Commission, there's 3. Commissioner Helen Marston, Commissioner Jeffrey Lee, Commissioner Serge Haddad.
But how did those spots open? Was that because someone voluntarily left?
Yeah, so at least, yes.
One of those, I think, was Patrick's spot, though, I think.
Yeah. So that there was one spot where we didn't appoint the incumbent.
So,
One of them was Redmond,
no, Redmond was on public safety.
public safety, okay.
But he moved,
But he moved. Yeah, but he's talking about planning right now.
Yeah.
Checking out planning.
So I think that's
someone-
two we
and
lost in
then
3 years.
Commissioner Leon just voluntarily did not.
Yeah, he voluntarily stepped down.
Yeah.
Stepped down.
Didn't
yeah.
apply.
Yeah.
And then
And
on Parks and Rec, we have Commissioner Cynthia Vance and Commissioner Lance Sparodi, who were appointed after we were elected.
And there was someone else who resigned.
Commissioner Wen.
That's right.
Yeah. So
Right,
we've
that's
had, in my
Glad you
opinion,
remember.
turnover. And on the Public Safety and Transportation Commission, we have Commissioner Betty Kwan, Commissioner Douglas Blatt, and Commissioner Noel Palmieri. So overall, all three
So
commissions.
about
we've
one a
had-
year.
We've roughly had a
One a
nearly
year.
50% turnover in the
Well,
last
there's only
3
5,
years.
but I'm
But
just
if you-
saying that's another way of looking at it, 3 years, one a year. It's been
But
3.
I think statistically, if you have a bigger commission, I guess there's a hope that Commissioner Chavez and I thought that it may be a little bit more turnover just because you've got more seats, then you may tend to have a little bit more turnover and maybe more of a chance for a new member to come on board. But also to Council Member Chavez's point, the Planning Commission, not only it's more technical, is that they tend to have a heavier schedule. They meet they meet twice a month as well. It's more of a burden to I think to more people. And secondly is that they can have a rather heavy agenda during the night. So the more people you have, the more discussion, the more, it may maybe more expeditious to keep the number to 5, kind of like the city council. Imagine we have 7 council members. I mean, the night would be pretty long every other Tuesday. So, so we thought at least initially, it would be good to try out on the Parks and Rec and traffic and public safety first, and then if there's future need, if things do work out, then perhaps we can come back and reconsider Plan Commission. But
And the frustrating thing for me as being part of the ad hoc committee was that the applicants that we got are really good, qualified people, people who would really, I
the same
believe,
thing.
do a great job.
It's very, very hard.
And to turn them away year after year, or until an opening comes up, who knows when there will be, there were no openings this year. Everyone who was up for reappointment reapplied. So contrary to the numbers that we've had in the previous 3 years, this year, there was none. There were no spots that were open.
I have a question. When we are doing like this senior master plan committee or different committees and advisories, do we ever contact these people who have applied for commissioners, knowing that they're interested in the first place
Peggy has.
for other things? Peggy's
I
like,
know
"What?"
Peggy has.
No, I was just wondering.
You mean go back and say, hey, we know you were interested before.
Correct.
Yeah, I believe we do. I know where we used to do it quite a bit was when we had our
Citizens
Citizens Academy.
Right.
We used to contact those people all the time because remember, one of the ideas of Citizens Academy was used as a breeding ground for our
Exactly.
commissioners, and it did a really good job for a while. Of course, we haven't had
We haven't had one.
Citizens Academy for a while, so that, enough with that, but, go ahead.
I'd just like to share that, I don't know if, well, first of all, I think one of the things we need to decide is, is there a problem with what we have and the way that we're doing it? So maybe the problem, I don't think is going to be solved by like expanding
Well,
the
and
group.
after giving it more thought, I agree with you, because even though that'll initially,
Right.
solve a problem, once we go to 7, then those 7 are doing a great job, and the future applicants aren't gonna get in there because the ones we have on it.
You
So
know-
it'll be an initial thing.
My thought was to why, if the problem is that we have so many good people and we want to, eventually have some people coming in that are new, why not do with like what we did with Measure AA? We limited it to 4 consecutive terms. Why not say with our commissioners that they can serve a maximum, I'm just throwing this out there.
And that's a good point, because that was going to be my next point.
Right,
is
a
that
maximum of 3 2-year terms.
It's sort of a term
which is
limit.
6 years, which is a substantial amount of time. I mean, I'm going on 9 years now. I mean, I'm thinking about in the next couple years, maybe it's time for someone else to, fill my shoes. I mean, definitely reached out to Nan, and she's done an excellent job. And I don't know, I don't know what the future might bring, but I definitely know that there's a time, where somebody will just make that decision. It's time for somebody else
I do like having experienced commissioners on the commissions that have gone through and become the vice chair and then become the chair and know how to run the meetings. For a lot of these people, it's the very first time they're ever running a meeting. It's their very first experience with local government. So it's nice to have somebody who's been in there for a few years, especially when it's going to be a particularly tough subject. They know how to run the meeting, which I think is a very good thing. But yeah, I agree.
But that's how you stagger it, though.
I mean, I
You don't
don't-
have a complete
Yeah.
turnover. You have
Correct.
2 or 3, so you
Correct.
always have some experience on there with perhaps a mix of new ones. It never made much sense to me that city council members have term limits, but our
Commissioners
commissioners do
don't.
not. It just, to me, I don't know how that computes.
I just want to say that when I first became a commissioner, I was the only person who applied to be a commissioner. So I think we've done a really, really good job of marketing and of reaching out to our residents and getting them to actually apply.
Well,
'Cause
we
like-
didn't see that this time around.
But Tom, I don't think we saw that specifically because after, some people applying for numerous times and not having the turnover, they're just
Right.
like, I
They
don't
get out-
think,
they
I don't think I
frustrated.
have a chance because there
Well,
are
we had
all
one member
these-
get up and say, well, if I'd have known I was going to be going after in their spot, I wouldn't even have applied.
Right.
So,
Right.
that tells
I
you.
don't know, I don't know what the sweet spot is, but maybe
But-
4.
but I have-
In my
4
mind, I'm
terms of-
thinking 4 terms times 2 years.
Yes.
That's 8 years.
I think term limit is one answer, but yet at the same time, I've looked at other cities, and I can't say that how many cities I've looked at, but I think like city of Pasadena is one of the cities I did look at. They're like 7, 9. I mean, a lot of cities have more than 5
But they're
commissioners.
bigger cities, too.
Yeah, well, some are, some
Yeah.
aren't, but
I mean-
so increasing number is actually not a bad thing.
I don't think it's a bad thing. I just don't
yeah.
think it's a need. I don't think there's a need for it. I don't think an argument's been made that we have a need. I think more of the problem in our specific city is that we have so many good people.
Right.
Which is a great thing.
Which is a great thing.
Do we have, well, we only have, Kathy's the only one here. Do you normally have all 5 commissioners at your meeting, or do you have a sense of, let me ask you this another way. Have you ever had to cancel a meeting for lack of a quorum?
No. Well, let me.
I think that was
Can I
when
make a- I
Cindy
wanted to
didn't
make a
show
comment.
up one year, right?
I will say with the current commissioners, we have had almost every meeting with everyone there. We don't have a lot of absences. We did have to cancel one meeting that I recall after the agenda was posted and everything was out because only 2 commissioners showed up to the meeting. And that was several years ago.
Oh, several years.
Several years ago.
And
Not
Tom-
sure if you were
Well,
on
you
the
have a good-
commission or
You
not.
have a good commission now. I mean, that's the, part of the catch-22 is that you have good commissioners, and why get rid of them?
You know, Tom, I was thinking the same thing, but I do recall that when we are reappointing, we get the attendance record of every single commissioner, and we take that into account because we don't want to reappoint someone who is not being consistent.
Well, and that was one of the reasons why we made some changes a few years ago.
Exactly.
But it
Exactly.
appears
So
to
we
me that,
do,
for
you
the most
know,
part, they're there.
That's the thing is,
Well, I don't know what the answer is, and again, I don't know that there is a good answer. I mean, as I said, increasing the number certainly will be a quick fix. We'll get people on there that probably will do a good job, but then a year or two from now, then when it comes time to fill their position, they're doing a good job, and there'll be other people who will come along and they'll want to be on there, and you're going to have the same problem, essentially, whether it's 3, 5, 7, 10, doesn't really
11.
matter. You know,
I can tell you that I have encouraged people to apply and to be interviewed, even though there is not an actual legitimate opening, and they know that going in. But I do tell them that it's good to do that because they, when the ad hoc is looking at the information, if they have applied before, that shows me that they are very interested and that they're coming back. And I tell them, you're getting your name out there, you're becoming familiar with the process, with the city council, and also to keep track of other committees, other things that they can, like CERT or academies and different things. So, I mean, I encourage people anyway.
Maybe it's
to do
time
it.
the way we change our interview process, or, in the past few years, we've always kind of had an unwritten agreement that serving commissioners didn't have to re-interview. Maybe we need to put them on the hot seat again and say, hey, look, what have you been doing for 2 years, and what do you foresee in the future 2 years? Same questions we would ask to new members. Why give them a free pass, maybe? On the youth committee, we do that. If we have someone returning, they have to reapply, and they have to re-interview.
Right.
You got to try out every year to be a cheerleader.
Yeah, there you go. Nobody gets a free
Just
pass,
saying.
so I mean, I don't know. I think this, and I think, with Vince and I, when discussing this, it was just frustrating to interview these excellent applicants, and have realize that there really isn't a space for you at this point.
Correct.
And sooner or later, these people are not going to come back, and at some point we may be faced with a prospect that we don't have good people to fill these positions, and that, of course, is going to affect the city as a whole. So, I mean, I don't know. That's why we wanted to throw it out there. If anybody else had any other ideas, or keep it the way it is and see what happens next time around. I don't know. Again, wherever the
It'll just be a little cozier up here with 7 people.
Well, the logistics doesn't bother me, and I know that perhaps our department heads, have 2 more people to deal with or whatever. That could be a little bit more daunting, perhaps at times, but you make it work. But.
Well, perhaps before we get a little further, let's open.
Excuse me.
Let's open the public comment for this item. So I'll open public comment for item 10B, and I do have one speaker request for Mr. Staver.
Mayor Mann, Mayor Pro Tempore Fish, council members, city staff. I've attended the Public Safety Committee and the Planning Commission, and there have been times when people have been absent there. I know one Public Safety Committee, there were only 3 commissioners there, and they still were able to do business, but, it kind of surprised me. That's happened a couple times, and I think maybe increasing it, I don't know if you could increase it to 6, but if you increased it to 7, it might be good. It might be something to try out. Maybe do it for 2 years or 4 years. I like Councilmember Chavez's idea of 4 2-year terms, and as a limitation to how long they can serve. I think 3 2-year terms it could work, but I like the 4 2-year terms. And I like the idea of the possibility of expanding to seven positions. And I think it could work. It just worries me when you have commission members not showing up like that, where you only have 3 there. I saw it once on the Planning Commission as well. I think, like I said, increasing it might help. I'd like to see it given a try for maybe a couple of years and see how it works. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Stafford. Is there anyone else that'd like to speak on this item? Mr. Clift.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening.
And our city council. And I'd just like to say that, first of all, I'm a resident of Temple City. Number two, I'm one of the original commissioners on what was the Public Safety Commission, which became the Transportation and Public Safety Commission. When we started, we had no background. I mean, we went in there blind, and I really appreciate hearing that we're doing a good job, over the years. And one of the things that I've always noticed is with people that apply and attending, and this is across, well, I haven't been to any of the Parks and Recreation meetings, but I know with planning and ours, it's only the people that show up. There's never people that come in just as an audience to see what we do. And I think if that was not necessarily a requirement, but a suggestion that people actually attend a meeting or two just to see what's going on, because, you're coming in, you don't know what the process is and stuff like that. And I'm not saying that we've had people that wouldn't be able to, pick up and go, but I think that would give them a better feel of what's going on, what the functions are.
That's always a question we ask.
I was going to say, that's
We always ask.
that's
that
one of my
question.
questions, always.
Have you ever attended any?
Exactly.
Yes, and I know what the
We always
answer is.
ask
Yes, and I know what the answer is because, I've been to tons
A
of
lot
these
of them say,
meetings.
no, I never have.
Yeah.
Yes, we know that. That's what
Yeah.
I mean. Because I think only one, that would be Doug Blatt, actually attended, and he was in the audience, because I recognized him when after he came on. But that would be something to, not necessarily make it a requirement, just let people know that it would be beneficial to go ahead and just attend and see what it actually involves, because, the first day you get there, not necessarily won't know what to do. You can always follow along. But it's always kind of better to know what you're getting yourself into. And anyway, that's my comments on it. Like I say, from the very beginning when we started, we had nothing to go by. And anyone who wants to apply to a commission now has a go by. Just attend one of the meetings. They're definitely worth the price of admission. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak on this item? All right, seeing none, I will close public comment and go back to additional council comments. I know we've heard a multitude of ideas floating out there. From my perspective, I don't think I've heard a unified approach or any sort of motion to this, but maybe I haven't really talked about this from my perspective, so maybe I could share with you
Maybe
guys.
you can go first.
Yeah, so I was thinking about this a lot, and I'm probably the only one up here who wasn't a commissioner before, so I lack the commissioner perspective. I was on a committee, but I understand that's inherently different in different respects. I guess part of going back to Councilmember Chavez's question about how many new folks we've had on the commissions, I kind of just used the time that Mayor Pro Tem and I have been elected as sort of just a reference point that's easy for me to understand. And just at a glance, it seems like in my opinion, we've had some turnover on it, albeit this year we did not have any. I also think that we sort of, in general, we have a lot of other great opportunities besides being on a commission for people who are interested in serving our city and community one way or the other. I mean, we just established a new committee. We had the Senior Master Plan Advisory Committee. We had the General Plan Advisory Committee.
Let me interrupt you real briefly. The problem with that point is that those are the people who are applying now, is the people who have done those things, but they're still not getting on the commissions. And that was the really frustrating thing for me this last go-around, is that we had those applicants, the ones who have sat on those other opportunities, and now they kind of want to, for want of a better term, move up in the world a little bit.
Right.
And be part of those commissions, but there's no spot for them. To say that there are other opportunities, I agree with you, there are, but the people that we're getting to apply are not the people who haven't been doing anything. They are the people who have been doing those things and now want to be on the commission. So that's the problem.
Right. Yeah, and also as you've mentioned, I mean, I agree with that statement, by the way. I see this as sort of like a short-term fix that, further down, it's very feasible that you have the problem that, all right, now we have 7 seats and we can't fill any of them. Then do we have to have another discussion about reducing it down to 5 seats? So I'm kind of on the fence on this. I think I'd be more inclined to increase the number if we really didn't have any turnover and new commissioners within the last couple of years. And I've served on the ad hoc committee as well with both Mayor Pro Tem as well as Councilmember Sternquist twice in the past year, and we've encountered the same problem as well. But like Mayor Pro Tem mentioned, it's a way to get your name out there. It's a way for us to know who you are, what you've done, what you're interested in, and you never know who decides to step down,
Exactly.
resign. There are unexpected vacancies that none of us can predict, and those are the first people on our mind, are the ones who have applied, who have been, like Commissioner Cliff mentioned, the people who attend the meetings. Those are the first people that are fresh in our minds. So I guess I'm kind of leaning towards keeping it this way. I mean, like Councilmember Chavez brought up another good point, is we had the Citizens Academy, which we used as a farming ground for commissioners. And I mean, it's an ancillary point, but I think it's important enough for us to kind of ask ourselves, are we really doing anything to kind of buoy that aspect? I'm not going to go on a tangent there.
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
And maybe this is partly my fault in bringing this to the council, is I don't, and because of the fact that we're all kind of on the fence, sometimes that when it's hard to make a decision like that, like this, partly I think sometimes it's because we don't have enough information to make a good, intelligent, well-informed decision. And based on the comments that I've heard tonight, there's some questions that in my mind I would like answered, and maybe bring this back for further discussion. I mean, it's not like it's something that has to happen overnight.
Right.
But there has to be I think we can all agree that something not necessarily has to be changed, but we need to take a look at how we select our commissioners, how we handle the commissions, what we do. I think that hasn't been done in a long time. Ever since we've been on council, we've never had really any changes in that front. I would propose that maybe we ask staff to maybe come back with some more information, maybe go back the last 2 or 3 years and provide the information to us, like how many meetings have there been less than 5 present? We've heard different stories. We've heard that, oh yeah, most of them are there, sometimes they're not. I'd also like to know some reasons, or how many commissioners have actually left, and the reasons for that. I know you put your numbers, you indicated these are how many we've appointed in the last 3 years, but then the flip side is how many have left and the reasons for that. And if it's truly a turnover that we can anticipate, then maybe there is no reason to change it. This year, I think it's glaringly before us because there were no openings.
Mm-hmm.
There were no openings.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I'd like to know a little bit more about how long our current members have been on the commissions. Okay,
That'd be a good thing.
some are new, some have been on there for over 10 years, I think. And knowing those types of things may help us to formulate, and maybe it won't, but at least it'll give us more information as to what the areas that we need to focus on, and whether we need to change the amount of people or whether we need to go to a term limit or some hybrid form of that, something of that sort. And so I guess my proposal would be that, I don't know that, I'm not prepared to make a motion tonight based on what I've heard and what I've seen, but I don't want it to die, and I think having this extra information and anything else that staff may feel is relevant to this discussion would be helpful for us in formulating a decision. So that would be my proposal.
Did we not have on our public art committee and then commission, didn't we have 7?
Well, that's one of those commissions that have fluctuated all over the place. I think we started, well, you weren't even here, I don't think, at the time.
We started with 7,
We-
and we
Oh.
reduced it to 5.
We reduced it to 5.
And then
And I
a
think-
committee, right?
And then we changed the type of committee it
I
was.
just,
It
I
was-
just want to share that when we had 7, there were a lot of problems with the, just, it might have just been
Personality-
unique with
there
that
was some personality
commission, but
conflicts.
That's because they
there
were
was-
artists. Hate to say it, but
But I think just what I've
There was.
observed, at the COG, we have lots of different committees. And they range from 5 to 11. There's a couple that have 13. But it just seems like when you have a larger group, there seems to be a tendency for
there
like
is.
this group and that group. I don't know what it is, if it's just human nature, or when you have a larger group, certain groups gravitate to one another, but it seems less complicated and so much more manageable with 5.
Well, and I wouldn't disagree necessarily with that, but I can also give you other examples. For example, with JPIA, we have 9 members on our executive committee, and sometimes that doesn't seem to be enough. I mean, and quite the opposite from what you've just stated. The 9 committee members do come together, and that doesn't seem to be a problem. Another example is our youth committee. We've gone around and around. We started, I think, with the youth committee, when we first started it, I think it might have been 7. And now it's grown to the last couple of years to be 11. And, we thought, well, is that too many? Is that not enough? But you know what? They all sit up here and they all tend to do what they need to get done. So I really think it's more the dynamics of the group than the sheer number of it. If you have 9 people who can't get along, then they're not going to get along. If you have 5 people that can't get along, then that's the way it's going to be. So to some extent, yeah, it is the number, but I don't think, we're proposing a jump from 5 to 7. It's not really that significant, but maybe it is in the long run. I don't know. But like I said, I think at this point, given how we're kind of all coming from different directions, maybe having a little bit more information and anything that the staff can come up with to help us, to guide us in this, could at least help us make that final decision whether we're going to do something.
So, but I'm still not clear. Are we looking, it seems like we have the problem with the commissions that we currently have. We don't have a problem with the
Well-
commissions and how they run and how they operate, which seems to be the most important thing in my mind.
It's not a problem with the commission and the commissioners that we have.
Right.
I think
But I think it's two
not
different
that's not a problem.
problems.
The problem that I foresee, and the frustrating thing that brought this to light for Vince and I think, was that we are turning away some pretty good people.
But Tom-
and are we going to keep these people around long enough to wait for an opening to happen just because it happened? I don't know.
No, I understand that, but then I go back to thinking, okay, well, if you have 7, you're still not going to turn away
yeah.
number 9 and 10.
Well, and I mentioned that earlier, so I don't know
Right.
that that's necessarily the problem.
Yeah.
That's the quick fix, but maybe not the long-term fix.
I mean, I would like to look at the long-term.
Well, the only
kind
way
of
the
fix.
long-term one is what term limits. If you have a commissioner that's been sitting on there, there are commissioners that literally could be there twice as long as any council member has ever been on there.
Listen, I'm the perfect example. I've served on Parks and Recreation Commission for 19
Yeah, you lasted
years.
over 3 generations of council. Not that was a bad thing.
I mean,
but
now I'm kind of embarrassed to say that
Well, no,
because
you
it's like
shouldn't- you
19
shouldn't be.
years we're trying to.
You shouldn't be, but at the same time, if you remember, you were ready to move on to other things as well.
I was,
Okay.
but I think a lot of that came with what I was personally at in my point in life with having young kids, and they actually grew up kind of with me involved in the city as a commissioner. And when they got old enough to, one was the other one was in high school and one was in college, then it was a different place to be in my life. It was like, yes, I can do more. But I just think they're like two different
Well, and I'm
issues.
a firm believer, and I think what you're saying, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, it seems
But
too
at this point, I'm not convinced that it's not broken. I think it needs maybe some
Adjustment.
updating or adjustments. Good word. And what those adjustments are, I don't know, but, you know, I maybe this is my legal background. Before I'm ready to make a decision, I want all the facts. I want all the information that's going to help me do that. And I think as we sit here tonight, maybe we're lacking that a little bit, and maybe once we get that information, then we can make that good judgment that we're supposed to make as city council members. You know?
Well, and maybe we can get some information as to, like, our surrounding cities, like how many commissioners do they have in,
that wouldn't-
you know, Parks and
Yeah, how
Rec,
do
just
they
as a
work?
guide,
Maybe
how do
talk to
they,
them.
how do they
You know,
work?
hey, you guys have 11 members on your parks. How's that work out for
Right. Let's
you know,
take
I mean,
advantage of that opportunity.
you? Yeah, I think so. Like I said, we're not under any rush or deadline. We have our commissions in place. It's just that I just want to send a message to all those people that are out there now who have applied in the past and maybe are thinking of applying in the future, that, you know, there is that opportunity perhaps to get on there. And maybe it's as simple as, you know what, I hate to say it, but it gives us more work to do, and that is just bring all the applicants in, and we'll interview them all, and we'll make a decision, rather than picking and choosing, you know, who we felt is more or less qualified to do it. That's going to take more of our time, but, you know, at least everybody gets their chance, their day in court, so to speak, right? So,
How appropriate.
yeah.
Okay,
So-
so is that a motion?
Yeah, well, I don't know, that's a long motion, but my motion, I think, would be, and Eric, you can guide me a little bit on this. My motion would be to continue this discussion to a future date, and ask that staff come back with a little bit more information based on our discussion today, to kind of provide some of that background information that we've talked about. Is that something that?
I'll second that motion if
Yeah,
that's a
I
motion.
think that's sufficiently clear, I think, in
Yeah,
city
you've been
managers.
writing,
Yeah.
I know Brian's been writing feverishly over here to my right,
So
so,
could that be a motion?
yeah, that's a motion.
Second.
Okay.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Could I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Chavez?
Yes.
Councilmember Sternquist?
Yes.
Councilmember Yu?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Fish?
Yes.
Mayor Mann?
Yes. All right, so
Okay.
to be continued.
That was a lot of talking.
Moving on to communications, we have none. Next, we have an update from our city manager.
Just real briefly, with the hot weather that's continuing, our cooling center at Live Oak Park continues to be activated, and
Are
when
we
it's
getting a lot of people with those things?
it's been a mixed bag. I've been going through. I would say it's pretty mixed. So some days we have a few, some days we don't have hardly any. So I think people are doing pretty good, but just
How late is the cooling center open?
it's the regular operations of Live Oak Park till 10 p.m. So as the sun has cooled, as the sun has gone down, and the heat is
Well, I've been
dissipating.
getting all of my notices, so I just want to say, if people in Temple City don't know it's there, then, I mean, I
We're
get it on the phone.
doing all that we
I get
can.
it everywhere.
Well, the last few concerts in the park coming up, including tomorrow night, as Ms. Lou noted, with National Night Out. So we will be there out in force tomorrow. And that's it for me, Mr. Mayor.
You had your grants on your.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, one more item. So one of the things we'll be doing is, right now we kind of decentralize our grant activity in terms of tracking. You'll be getting a report from me on a more periodic basis on some of the grants we're tracking, especially as we developed our first 5-year CIP that nails it down kind of what our priorities are from a capital improvement side. We're going to track that with a kind of a grant tracking process as well as as an addendum to our capital improvement plan. So to be a little bit more active. So all the departments will be trying to, get that information, but we will be centralizing that information. So we're kind of tracking it internally in one spot in the city manager's office.
So thank you for taking that charge, because there are so many opportunities with our Council of Governments, as you know, and they come to the city, and we need to take a look at those, or we will have missed opportunities. And I want to thank you for making up that chart that you did that actually shows what grants are available and what we can check off, so that we don't miss those opportunities. So thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilmember Chavez. That's it for me, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, and maybe just briefly, I also want to thank Councilmember Sternquist for your perspective on being on a multitude of regional agencies and boards, for kind of bringing some of this to our attention that we may not be aware of. And I think kind of institutionalizing the way we do the grant process allows us as a council to kind of make better decisions, better planning decisions, and as well as budgeting decisions, which is ultimately what controls the CIP program. So looking forward to that being brought to us. All right, next we have an update from our city attorney.
Mayor and council members, just quickly, I came across this in an unrelated kind of news story that I was reading, and I went and checked up on it. It won't affect the city at all this year, and it won't affect you till your next regular election. But there is a new law that went into effect beginning this January, having to do with what types of mass mailings incumbents can put out coming up. Basically, a mass mailing is 200 substantially similar pieces of mail that are sent out unsolicited. We run into this all the time when we're doing city newsletter or something that's a tangible mailing. There are certain things you can't do, list pictures of council members. You can't have an editorial by the mayor or a council member in something that goes in the mail. You can do anything you want to almost online. Previously, certain cities had local requirements that restricted communications that cities could give prior to a general election. The state has now put something in place that will limit communications, mass mailings with regard to incumbents that will be on the ballot 60 days out from the election. Generally, that's going to affect your use of letterhead and stationery that lists council member's name. It's going to affect notices of meetings or events or announcements and business cards. I say it will affect you, but really it only affects it if it's a mass mailing, which is again 200 pieces of mail. It will likely not affect the city itself. It may affect incumbents who are running because the rule will also apply to them. None of you are going to have to worry about it for a while, but I know that an election season is coming up in other communities, and you might see and hear about some of these restrictions people are dealing with. I just wanted to let you know that they're out there. We'll work with the city clerk at the appropriate time when it's necessary to give you full guidance on what you can and you can't do. Otherwise, that's all I have for you this evening.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Moving on to council reports regarding ad hoc or standing committee meetings. Do we have any?
I don't have a report, but I have a couple of questions. First of all, the school district city standing committee, are we in the process of, we haven't had a meeting for a while. Are we trying to set one in September, or can we? I think it's getting to that point where
we will outreach.
We
will outreach to the superintendents and see what we can try to do.
Okay, and then also, what are we going to do with this public arts commission or ad hoc? I mean, I see that was formed back in 2016, and we have not had a meeting yet that I'm aware of. I think you and I have been on that, but it hasn't been since 2016. I think you and I, might have been this last go around, but are we doing anything with that, or?
We haven't done anything, obviously, recently.
We have no art commission.
We don't have an art commission per se. It's
I think part of the process was when we last discussed this, we were gonna get the principals together and see where we wanted to go with it, or
yeah, and that
never materialized either.
Those meetings did not materialize.
All right. So, unless there's any compelling reason to continue with that, I don't see. I know Eric always is on our backs about keeping these ad hoc committees when there's really no goal or function for them to do, so maybe it's time to.
And if
unless
something
it
does come up, we can always
We can
always
reinstitute it.
reform it.
if
Okay.
there's a need for it.
Yeah, I concur with Councilmember Chavez, so we'll disband the Public Arts Ad Hoc Committee for now.
And with that, Councilmember Fish and I have not met once on, I think it's facilities.
I'm not on that.
Facilities, no, facilities
I'm not on
is
that one.
Councilmember you and Mayor Mann.
library construction.
The library, you
No,
and,
there was another one. Maybe we eliminated before.
I think we
There's not-
eliminated
Yeah,
it. I think we eliminated it
Oh,
before.
okay.
Yeah.
Let's see.
And we have the city fee ad hoc committee, that's tomorrow.
Yep.
So, all right.
And then Councilmember you and I had already reported out on
Right.
the previous item.
Okay.
Okay, so if there is none, then we move on to items separate from the regular agenda, starting with Councilmember Sternquist.
A couple of things. The Council of Governments had a homelessness summit, and both Mayor Pro Tem Fish and our city manager attended.
Were any homeless invited to that?
Actually, there were a couple of homeless people that were there that were actually part of the video that took place. So they came, and there were representatives from quite a few sheriffs. Hilda Solis was there. We had 150 people, which was a great turnout. And there were representatives from all the cities that did a homelessness plan with that funding that came out. How long ago was that? A year?
A year ago.
About a year ago. They did highlight Temple City, and that Temple City had staff members contribute to the white paper that was written on the homelessness situation, and contributed to how we possibly can work together as a region to, we're not going to solve the problem, but make it less impactful for
I
cities.
was reading there was some issue though that came up, that the county promised something, but now it's pulling back?
So there was $9 million that was promised to the region. And Sheila Cool, I believe that's how you pronounce her name,
Toby Gillis.
one of her deputies, her deputy made a motion that they reduce that amount of money. And there's a discrepancy between, do you treat the homeless person first that is mentally ill or has some immediate physical need, or do you go straight to rapid housing? And because there's a difference in opinion, there was a vote taken with the county supervisors, and instead of allotting $9 million to the region, they took away $3 million and gave $6 million, which is a drop in the bucket for all the cities that have participated in a plan that they won't be able to implement due to the reduction in funding. So that was pretty much a bomb that dropped at the homeless, because a lot of people hadn't heard
Get a plan
it.
together, we've got this money, they get the plans together, oh, by the way, we don't have the money.
Right.
Nice.
And then within that $6 million, quite a healthy chunk went to Los Angeles, which is another.
Well, they do have the most homeless, I would imagine.
Well,
too.
And they do.
But anyway, so it's an ongoing battle, but it was, one of the things that was a good takeaway was to actually see what different cities who had their plan, what they were doing. They all cost money, a lot of money that the cities do not have. But what's interesting is the woman who's a council member in the city of Arcadia, we spoke briefly after the meeting, and I said, I want to see your plan. And one of the things that the Council of Governments wants to do is have the cities be able to share the plans with one another. And I said, since you're our neighbor, we have similar populations, I'd love to look at your plan. And she said, oh, I want you to see it. And she said, the one thing.
Whose plan, our plan?
Arcadia's. We don't have a plan.
You want to see their plan?
Yes, I want to see their
Arcadia has a plan?
Arcadia has a
Do
plan.
they have homeless in Arcadia?
They do.
Do they?
They do.
Oh, okay.
So,
All right.
So.
More than we? I think we have 10.
Well, on any given day.
Yeah.
But she said, I am most proud to tell you that our plan has no funding requirements. So now I'm very anxious to see their plan. So
Well, I don't understand what that means, no funding
she says they can implement their plan without counting on any money coming in from
they
the
haven't-
outside.
So they fund it themselves.
I don't know. We just,
somebody's
that
gotta
was,
fund it.
so I shared with her that I was gonna have our city manager reach out to Dominic, their city manager, and get us a copy of what their plan is and what it looks like. Because I think one of the goals of these homelessness plans was to be able to piggyback on one another to see what works and what definitely has
Sounds like they
not
should
worked.
get that plan to the city of Los Angeles, too.
Well, yes, there's a, the county's not easy to
Yeah, I know.
get information with sometimes.
Do you remember what cities partnered? I think it was Irwindale and
Azusa, maybe?
And Azusa partnered, which actually was a really good idea because then they could pool their resources. So that might be something else, just to.
So it was interesting. What I will do is sometimes the information, the packets that come from COG are 350 pages long. So what I will do is just extract the pages that I think you might be interested in and then send them to Brian or Eric to send out to all of you on the homeless issue. But it's an ongoing battle in all the cities, and there have been small strides made, but it's just something that we're going to have to continue to work on in our own city. Let's see, was there something else? Just wanted to ask Brian also, maybe Brian goes to what's called the city manager TAC, and that's a monthly meeting also. And it's sort of an overlap of the important things that we do at our governing board meetings. And Brian, if you wouldn't mind occasionally reporting on some of the highlights that you discuss there, it would, as you find appropriate, it would be appreciated also.
Certainly.
Okay? Yes.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I thought you were-
Oh. And let's see, is there anything else? Homeless plan, Katie? Nope, I think that's it, so thank you.
Great. Councilmember Chavez?
Just real quickly, just give a shout out to Brian Arizumi for his most recent graduating class, CERT class that completed their training on Sunday, and all of his staff doing a fantastic job, and 20 to 25 members safer now. So that, it's a good program that Brian puts on, a lot of work, but they do a good job, and Jerry was there the whole weekend, I think, taking photos. And are they already up on your website? Yeah. So, good stuff. And that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Yu?
Nothing yet, thank you.
All right, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Fish?
I wanted to thank staff for that video. I thought it was very nice and well put together. I'm hoping it's going to be on social media, maybe Facebook and things, so that I can share it. And maybe in the future, we could invite the owner to come and watch it with us. I think it'd be a nice tribute. I think he would enjoy seeing it at a council member and or a meeting and seeing how many people would be able to share it. So I think that would be a great idea.
Free
And
advertising.
You know what? Why not?
Right?
And I wanted to thank Commissioner Jim Cliff. You are a very dedicated commissioner. You are at almost all of our meetings, and I just wanted to thank you. We wish we had more like you. And, you're right. Yours was a brand-new commission. So, you did kind of start from scratch. So I appreciate that. You would be somebody I wouldn't want to lose because of your experience. Just thought I'd throw that out there. And looking forward to tomorrow. Tomorrow, National Night Out, 6 to 9.
Can we pick a city shirt to wear?
Oh, yeah. Are we picking a color?
All right, we could talk about that afterwards. All right, is that all?
That's it.
Okay,
Yes,
thank you. So I'll also try to be brief here. We had another Facebook Live session. I'm losing track of the days. Not last Friday, but
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. And we had our Parks and Rec director, Kathy
Yay.
Burrows, who
I
was
saw that.
amazing. She was incredible, and I want to thank staff for actually coming up with that idea. Obviously, Parks and Rec is one of the more exciting things going on in our city, so having her perspective and being able to kind of share it in a more casual setting, something less formal than a council meeting, I thought was kind of neat. It kind of showed a different side of what we do, and having your personal perspective, I thought was really interesting. It was a learning experience for myself as well, because she was talking about things that I actually didn't know a lot about, some of the history of what we've done in the past, and I think we also addressed some common questions that we've gotten in previous Facebook Live sessions, as well as questions that I'm sure all 5 of us get asked related to what are we doing to upgrade our park facilities, what's sort of the outlook in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, and so kind of maybe going into a little bit about the funding and where we're getting the funding, how is that being allocated, what are some of those challenges from a budgetary standpoint. I thought would kind of shared an interesting perspective on that. So thank you very much, Kathy, for being a part of that. And I think the next one, I believe we're going to highlight our specific plan. So we're going to kind of, I guess, in some ways, we're kind of going through our departments.
That's great.
And I just want to kind of throw that out there that I know it's a far cry from bringing back our Citizens Academy, but this is sort of my weird way of maybe resurrecting that in one form or the other by having small snippets of that come back.
Do we have any numbers on how many people are actually watching these things?
Yeah, actually, Brian Haworth on Friday had shared some numbers. I don't have them with me right now, but I think the last 3 videos we've had over 1,000 views already, and
that's great.
And one of the, I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the interesting points that staff brought up was we want to pick topics that are not just informative but also engaging, and so when they suggested talking about the specific plan, I initially balked a little bit because, I mean, not everyone gets excited about land use laws, but I think the specific plan is very unique because it pertains to a particular intersection in our city that a lot of people talk about. People are always asking about, what's happening at the Kmart site or what's happening at that intersection. And so staff is still putting together that, and we need to figure out a way to kind of synthesize that in a manageable video and kind of find a balance between being very technical but also bringing it in a form of a perspective that's easy for everybody to understand.
And I think a lot of people don't realize what a powerful tool cities have with land use. It's like one of the, when you do your ordinances and how people can develop in your city, how important that is to a city.
Yeah, and so that, I think, and that was staff's idea. I can't take credit for that. But we're trying to kind of address new and exciting things, but also things that are very relevant and pertinent to ongoing city developments. And so I think even though we've had council meetings, lots of council meetings on when we adopted the general plan and the specific plan, but maybe having sort of that discussion in a different context and a different perspective could maybe garner more interest in the future.
And maybe it's me, but they can get to these things on the website, correct? But I had a heck of a time finding it the other day. I mean, is there a certain link or something that you hit on? I couldn't find it on our website.
The Facebook Live sessions? Yeah, we'll categorize that.
Not that easy to get to or to find.
When it happens, it's at the top of the website of the Facebook page.
Okay, so you have to go to Temple City Facebook page.
Yes.
That's different from the Temple City website?
So, well, you bring up a good point, because I think one of the things that we had talked about is to make that more easily accessible through the website.
I think I got to it just by luck, because I was just hitting buttons and I don't know what I'm doing when I get on there, but it wasn't that easy. I would think we want to make it easy for people to get to, so just a.
Oh, yeah, that's a great suggestion, and I think we should make it easier for people to access, because not everybody has a Facebook account, so that's understandable. And sort of maybe an ancillary point to that, I know we kind of alluded to the Citizens Academy, so I think staff is looking into kind of more creative ways we can revive that in a form that's more accessible to everyone, but also stays true to sort of the original intent of the Citizens Academy. So I think staff's gonna maybe bring some ideas back for us. That's been a point that I've heard at least multiple council members bring up within the last year or two. So I think
Did
it's
we
due
ever
time.
film those? Do you know?
And you've kind
Jerry
of
did.
Yeah.
He filmed the Citizens Academies.
2014 was the last.
Yeah, I think that's the last one we had.
Yeah.
That was the last one.
I mean, it seems like if it's even like we have those, and I don't. I mean, it was done so well. It seems like you could even form an online class for people who weren't able to come, and maybe have like a little. We have a quiz that went with.
Take a test afterwards?
Take a little test.
You
I
don't
don't
have
know.
those on your website, though, do you? Yeah.
They're there, but they're not available.
But that should be on our website, I would think. If Jerry would allow us to have them, I'm sure he would, but.
Yeah. And I think you're kind of going in the same direction that I think staff has been discussing is there are certain tweaks and updates that we might want to do, and we've talked about sort of the length of the course and how some people
That's
may
always been my criticism of
It's been
the
too
Systems Academy was since day one.
To
I mean, it was very well done, but I always said that, 7 sessions, 2 hours each.
It's a large commitment.
It's a big commitment. A lot of people cannot do it. Yeah.
But you know what? And, we do this at PCC too. Everything nowadays is online, media, everybody's got to go online. I don't know, maybe I'm old school, but it's nice to have that human touch once in a while. I wouldn't want to give that up entirely. I mean, I wouldn't want to say, okay, you can attend a Citizens Academy, just click a couple buttons and you got it right there. And I agree, there has to be an equal, not too long, and it was a long time, it was a big commitment people were making. But at the same time, it's nice to see these people. Who's in charge of, who is our city manager? Who is our head of our Parks and Rec? And
what
it's
was
good to put a
good?
face with these people and meet them and shake their hand.
What was good was to be able to go to, I went through it, to go to the sheriff's department.
Yeah, you go to the different
yard.
sites. You
We
go to
went
the yard and everything
we
like
saw
that.
it,
There's a lot to
and
be
you
said for
saw
that.
these things that you sometimes just hear about.
So, there's gotta be a medium somewhere
where they
there.
are, and you do get to meet the sheriff and so, yeah, I agree. It can't
I
all
think
be
we have
online.
to, somehow strike a balance.
Well, I was
suppose.
always advocating, we can have a long version with people who love to spend that time, but there are plenty of citizens who might only have 2 nights. I mean, they have work, extra work,
7
kids,
weeks at home.
school.
Well,
all
people are
kinds of
busier and
stuff.
busier today. It would be nice to do it quickly. There's no question. I think the last ones I was looking at, they were talking about maybe a couple of days or spread out over maybe 2 weekends or something like that. I don't know.
When I did that 4 years ago, that town hall meeting where they had a choice of going to or rotating to 3 different topics. That I got a lot of good feedback about that. It was kind of a smaller version of the Citizens Academy, but just it was more about the finance department, and I forget what the other was at this point, but it was just one evening, and it was 2 hours, I believe. And so they were very short sessions, but they did get to meet the people, the staff, and I don't know, so maybe something a little bit more than that, but not as elaborate as 7 sessions.
Yeah, and I think it's very interesting. All the points that you brought up, I think, is stuff that I know staff is well aware of and trying to kind of come up with that middle ground that retains,
But let me ask you this, though.
retains those aspects.
Maybe are we expecting too much of staff and saying, okay, staff, you do this? Maybe it's time to form an ad hoc committee of the city council to kind of push this along and put our stamp on there, because after all, it is our Citizens Academy, it's the city's Citizens Academy, and I mean, I've been mentioning it for a long time. I know you have, other people have, but it doesn't seem to be going anywhere. And, you know, it gets a little frustrating sometimes when you go 2, 3, 4 years now without having it in any form whatsoever. It seems like we get things done quicker when we do form some type of ad hoc committee to push it along a little bit. So I don't know, you're the mayor, that's something maybe that you may want to consider for another meeting, but.
Yeah, I would suggest for a future meeting that we at least give staff a chance to bring back the ideas they've come up with for considering all the comments that we've heard over the last couple of years, and then at that point decide. I think it's a good idea to kind of push that along.
Just kind of push it along a little bit,
Yeah.
you know, and see what the good and the bad things are from lessons learned. I mean, as Vince mentioned, it was a good idea, but you know, when you have good ideas, sometimes you overdo it. And now we have to pull back maybe a little bit and say, okay, where do we really want to be with this thing, considering all the other avenues that we have since that time. So,
certainly.
that's all.
Well, I mean, what we had before was very good. I mean, I'm not saying I just forget that.
No.
Just maybe perhaps there's a long version for people like the more detail, and maybe just a 1 day or 2 hours, just a quick run through for people who can't afford
That's
the 7 sessions.
The abridged version of it. Huh?
Yeah, abridged version, the Reader's Digest version.
Yeah, there you go.
Wow, you're dating yourself.
Yeah. That's true. I grew up with that.
Hey, so did I.
I miss the Reader's Digest,
So do
actually.
I loved it.
That's right.
Reader's Digest.
All right, so
Make great
staff will
Christmas
bring that
trees
back at a later time for discussion. I think you've heard I think all 5 of us have expressed an interest in bringing that back. Okay, so moving on to item 16, there are no reimbursements. Item 17, additional public comments. I do have one for Mr. Steve Stafford.
Trifecta tonight, huh?
Yeah. Mayor Mann, Mayor Pro Tempore Fish, council members, city staff, I'd like to see this meeting ended in memory of Gene Mashinsky, who was a fire captain for many years, worked in the camps, developed our camp crew vehicles. He did a lot for the department. He worked here in Temple City. I'd like to see this meeting adjourned in his memory. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stafford. Do we have any additional public comments? Mr. Jambazian.
Good evening, Mayor Mann and council members. Jerry Jambazian. I know that Beverly Hills and Santa Monica is looking at the scooters or motorized type of things, but I've seen 2 of them just today. One of them on the sidewalk and one in a traffic lane in front of my store.
The motorized one?
Yes, without a helmet or anything like that. What is it, Bing or Lime or whatever it's called? I don't know what, but I don't know where they get them, but I just making you alert of the situation, and maybe you could be looking at it because I can only see it getting worse. I mean, we're really small compared to Santa Monica and Beverly Hills, but it's something to look at because they go pretty fast.
Yes, they do.
I'd say they probably go about 30 miles an hour. I don't know, but
Yeah, they can.
but to be in a traffic lane, that's a little dangerous.
Well, my understanding is that company has targeted certain cities and actually marketed in those cities for a specific reason.
Okay.
And that's why they've had such an influx of it. But, and now that you have cities like Long Beach, Santa Monica, Beverly Hills, those
I believe
areas.
South Pass
Mhm.
does it.
I don't know, South Pass. I was thinking that the other day, is that I'm surprised we haven't seen any in Temple City, but maybe
Yes.
we have, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate Steve's comments tonight, and I did know Gene Mashinsky, and he was a fine gentleman, and his association with fire station and that type of thing. But there's also another person that I'd like to respectfully ask that the council adjourn in memory of Philip Pettis. Philip was 74 years old and the managing editor for 3 decades of Temple City Life. Philip passed away on July 29th in Lake Wales, Florida. Philip was an Eagle Scout and served in the Marine Corps, where he was stationed in Guantanamo, Virginia, and later at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. Quantico, that's it. And he lived in Temple City for many years and then moved back to Florida about 10 years ago. He continued his editing and graphic skills work by the internet, serving as editor not only for Temple City Life, but the Alhambra Chamber paper also. He was a man of wide knowledge, good humor, and charity, and his special interests continued to be in prison ministries. On a personal note, Philip was a good mentor to me. He taught me to be a photographer. He taught me not only to take good photos, but also to tell a story. And that's what I love to do, tell a story in photography. He taught me to be a better writer, and he was a special person. Even though we're 3,000 miles apart, he was a good friend of mine. So respectfully ask that the council adjourn also in his memory tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to make a public comment? Oh, Mr. Cliff.
Well, one more time, I'd just like to respond to Mayor Pro Tem Fish, and she was thanking me for doing all this stuff. But really what it comes down to is you, the council. The reason I was involved in all of this is years and years ago, there was a council here that was doing some pretty bad stuff, and a group of us got involved and made things change. And in the process, we got a lot of good candidates. They've all been elected. They've all been elected to our, to our city council, and are doing a great job. So really, it comes back to you. And that's the reason I'm here. Is, I was watching the bad people do bad stuff. Now it's good to see good people doing good stuff. And as far as those electric scooters go, they are regulated by the Department of Motor Vehicles. There is a section in the vehicle code that states how fast they can go, where they can be operated.
Really?
Just off the top of my head, they can only be operated on streets with 25-mile-an-hour speed limits and below. So you can't ride them above
Really?
that.
Interesting.
And I'm not sure about a helmet requirement, but it's a good idea. But that's one thing that I guess these companies don't tell you when they just dump them on the sidewalk there for anyone to use. And also riding double is illegal. I think it's someplace in the vehicle code on mopeds. I think it's section 406 or something like that. It's a subsection of that. But no, they are regulated, and that's the first place to start with those. And riding on the sidewalk is illegal, just some of those things. But if, Jerry, if you ran into that. And I think the maximum speed limit with them is 25 miles an hour. So if they're going faster than 25 miles an hour, they're totally dangerous. The wheels are just too small. You hit something small, on the road, any type of pavement imperfection or anything on the road, you're going to go down on them. So just something to consider there. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that'd like to make a public comment? All right, seeing none, I'll close public comment. And on that note, I think it's maybe Mr. Cook, you could look into the scooter issue, and hopefully we could kind of get ahead of the game before it becomes a really big mess. Well, hopefully it's not, but if you could, please. And with that, I'd like to adjourn tonight's meeting in a memory of both Gene Mashinsky and Philip Pettis. Meeting is adjourned.